Let's just start with some introductions now. I think Misha's still working on his mic, but yeah, I'm Jordan. I go by Round Elephant. I do community and governance here at One Inch. I'm not a developer, so I'm going to be asking a lot of kind of simple questions for Fusion mode to try to get my head around it. Very happy to have Anton and Misha here on the call. And Matt, Trader Snow, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Matt, and I've been with One Inch for almost 2 years now, and I work on the support and community team. Also, not a developer, so yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and no such thing as a bad question. So,
Yeah, feel free to drop those questions in the community calls text thread, and we'll read them off to Anton and Misha here. Anton, I bet almost everyone knows who you are, but you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm Anton. I'm co-founder of One Inch project. I writing software for more than 20 years, and I switched to blockchain in 2017. And since that moment, I realized that writing smart contracts is like a superpower. And that's what really interesting for me. And I'm glad that being a co-founder, I still have a lot of time dedicated to writing smart contracts.
So you say it's a superpower. What do you mean by that? It feels powerful writing it, or?
Previously I worked on development software for desktops, for iPhones, and usually writing software for like user applications is something which requires you to write more new features and care less about code structure and code quality. And any project with time creating bigger and code is harder to understand, harder to maintain, and it requires more time to keep it clean or something. But when we are writing smart contracts, it's a different approach. We dedicate a lot of time and resources to make our code as clean as possible, as performant as possible. It's kind of balance between performance and code readability and quality.
Is that because we have the Ethereum gas fees there, like more complicated, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
code that's longer than it needs to be would cost more money to the users, or?
Yeah. Because the less gas costs your smart contracts, the better rates would get users if it's like aggregation protocol or limit order protocol. For example, if user would put identical limit orders on two different limit order protocols, it will be filled much faster on protocol where gas fees are lower, which consumes less gas. Because if you have, for example, $100 order and filling your order costs $2, this means that effective exchange rate of your order is 2% worse for you, for those who gonna fill it. And if gas would cost twice less, it's like rate will be better for those who will fill it. So gas is really important for smart contracts.
And this gas optimization kind of is what sets One Inch apart, right? We like using One Inch is cheaper in gas terms than using a lot of the actual liquidity sources directly, right?
Yes, the more optimal your smart contracts are in terms of gas, the better aggregation you could achieve. And one of the most important points here is to have algorithm to find those rows. So yeah, gas efficiency and how cool is your algorithm to find the road.
Oh, one quick thing before we jump into Fusion. I heard that it's actually cheaper in gas terms to use One Inch to make a swap on Uniswap than it is on Uniswap. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. We wrote optimized version of Uniswap router. We called it Uniswap. We have two different versions currently, Uniswap for version 2 pools and version 3 pools of Uniswap. And making swaps on one or multiple sequential pools on this router is 20% cheaper in terms of gas than using Uniswap router. So users of DeFi, they can't use pools directly without routers because their API of smart contracts of those pools is not like considered to be executed from wallet. It requires multiple interactions. For example, Uniswap version 2 pool, you need to transfer your tokens to the pool and then ask pool to transfer tokens to you. You can't do this in one transaction. If you will try to do this in two transactions, someone will sandwich you and get your money. So you should use some router, and our router is more gas efficient than Uniswap router. We wrote it using assembly and like really hardcore optimizations. And I think in next version we can do it better.
Did you say 20% cheaper in gas terms?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize. So if it was, let's say, $10 in gas fees to use Uniswap directly, it'd only be $8 using 1inch. Very cool.
Yeah, that's correct. But if someone would like to compare gas on their own, it's also important to understand that gas consumption is really hard to measure properly because when you perform transaction, it's even matter if you had destination token previously or not. If you're like buying, for example, USDC and your USDC balance was zero, your transaction will be 15k gas, would cost you 15k gas more than if you would have some USDC on your balance. So, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that aspect of it. Thank you for that overview. I think this is a good segue to transition over to the new 1inch fusion mode. The whole team has been working on it.
Excuse me, let's check if Michael have his mic working.
I see you off mute, Misha, but I don't hear anything right now. Maybe you should log off, maybe close down Discord and turn it back on. Okay. Yeah, well, he's troubleshooting. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about the gas fees versus on 1inch versus these other protocols. Is it just on Uniswap that we've optimized the router, or are there other dexes or liquidity sources that it's actually cheaper to use 1inch than the liquidity source itself?
In latest version, we have some other optimizations. For example, latest version of limit order protocol and latest version of aggregation protocol, they are deployed on the same smart contract. We made them fit into one smart contract, and this allowed us to have really cheap limit orders and really cheap RFQ limit orders. We have a separate version of limit orders for RFQ, which is just like really cheaper than usual limit orders. They're like a bit less agile, have less features, but their main feature is gas efficiency.
Could you define RFQ really quick for the audience?
1 second, Michael, can you hear us? We still can't hear you, I think.
You could also try calling in from your phone too. Maybe just use a different device.
Hey, Tanner.
I think that in next version, currently you can make sequential swap on pools of Uniswap version 2 and version 3. And I think in next version, we will add more features, like more protocols, and you will be able, users, when they swap, they will be able to mix pools of different protocols.
I don't know what you mean by that. Mixed pools of different protocols when they're swapping.
Yeah, this means that currently you can swap on several Uniswap version 2 pools or several Uniswap version 3 pools. You can't mix them in this optimized version of router. But in next version of aggregation protocol, I think we can achieve this.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So if we're making a swap in the 1inch router right now, you only are routed to Uniswap 2 pools or 3 pools in the optimized way?
No, I would say we're looking for optimized Uniswap version 2 road, looking for optimized best road of Uniswap version 3 pools, and trying to find overall best road at all. Then we compare all of them in terms of gas, and if one of them wins, we use it. For example, on small amounts, it's much more important to spend less gas. So if you are swapping $100 and paying like $5 for gas, this usually means that 1inch tries to minimize your loss. So you're like losing 5% of your volume, and we're trying to minimize your loss. And it will be like usually cheaper to swap on single Uniswap V2 pool and get, for example, $1 less, but spend like $5 less on gas or something like this.
So in what ways does this gas optimization play into the new Fusion protocols? Just for those who are listening.
Yeah, new Fusion protocol is built on top of limit order protocol. So Fusion orders are like limit orders, but they are customized. Since our limit order protocol is like really agile and have a lot of features like dynamic price, like a conditional filling, we built these Fusion orders on top of limit orders. What was the question?
Just like how does the gas optimization play into like resolvers and Fusion?
I dived too much in limit order protocol. Yes, since it's highly efficient in terms of gas, and in 1.5 years since release of the first version of limit order protocol, it achieved almost 80% of all limit orders volumes on Ethereum. So it's highly efficient, still highly efficient because we use this protocol under the hood for the Fusion. Yeah.
Could you repeat that really fast? You said 1inch limit order is 80% of all limit orders on Ethereum?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
1inch limit order protocol since the beginning in the summer of 2021. Currently, in like last month, it got like 75 to 80% of all limit order volumes, like comparing to other limit order protocols.
Wow.
Does it work now for me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Misha.
Hey, Misha.
How are you?
Sorry, I don't know what was that. Because my microphone, I changed it to the iPhone actually for this to work. So I'm currently from mobile. Sorry about that.
Well, you're crystal clear now. So thanks for joining us.
Okay. Yeah, nice. So sorry
Yeah.
for interrupting you, Anton. Please go on about Wings
Michael,
orders.
maybe you want to add something regarding how much is gas efficiency important for smart contracts and in 1inch protocols?
Yeah, it's extremely important. Especially it was very important like bull market times when Ethereum was expensive as hell and gas prices were high, and you had to pay ridiculous prices for all those transactions. Then our gas optimizations, that was the time when those were really shining. Yeah, so we're doing our best to minimize users' fees across all our protocols.
I'm afraid Ethereum past upgrades and upcoming upgrade is not going to solve any scalability issues. Maybe only for layer 2. So
yeah, but all those rollups. I mean, all those rollups are solving it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
At least by removing part of the load, which lowers the gas fees. So some work is being done.
Yeah, I mean, potentially on next bull run on Ethereum, we will see high fees again.
That's for sure.
We're deployed on a couple of rollups already, right? Arbitrum, Optimism. I guess there's no EVM ZK rollup out yet, but I bet we'll be deploying on those ones.
And no production here a lot yet, but there are testnets and we are testing them. So yeah,
I would say we're expecting them.
Nice.
To use them, yeah, because it would be like really nice. They comparing to optimistic rollups for users, they will not have any delays for withdrawals.
Yeah. The one I'm most excited about, I don't know if picking favorites, but it's ZK Sync 2.0. Really, I've been using ZK Sync for a while now for Gitcoin grants. Actually, they're integrated with that, and during the bull run, like just donating it was like donating a couple bucks a project. You ended up spending like $15 for each $2 transaction you wanted to send. And ZK Sync cut that down to like pennies. So I'm excited for them to do that with like the broader DeFi space rather than just transactions.
Yeah, ZK Sync 1.0 was like pretty simple, and it was in mainnet it's already in mainnet for a few years. They did not allow it to have any custom smart contracts being deployed on their ZK Sync because version 1 did not support this, but they supported bridging any tokens to their network and transfers of these tokens.
Cool. I think it's a good time to jump into the 1-inch fusion mode right now. I know you guys were both working on that over the last few months. Do you want to give a brief overview of what 1-inch fusion mode is, what changes users can expect?
Before we dive in, I just want to reiterate a bit because I was like without a mic when Anton said that about the superpowers being a smart contract developer. And my opinion on that was like similar. I had a similar experience, but instead of like what Anton meant about having superpowers, my experience was like similar to what you do what you expect when you start to like becoming a software developer. You think, look, you gain similar type of superpowers. Like when you learn how to code stuff, you then can automate your life a little bit. You can develop application to simplify your life, to do some stuff that is not possible if you don't know how to code. And now, like with this Ethereum smart contracts and stuff, you can now, instead of like simple lifestyle optimization, you can actually write your own bank or like your own part of your financial system. Like you can do crazy stuff actually with all these smart contracts. And this was a kind of superpower I was thinking about when Anton said that.
Financial superpower.
Yeah.
Let me add shortly. I agree. Yeah, maybe one of the most impressive things here is writing something which is like a core logic, like protocol logic. It's not the same as writing front end, back end, some things which changes frequently. It's something which you write, spend a lot of time on thinking how exactly it will work. You should also understand like game theory to predict how someone will try to hack it, economically hack it or something. And then you deliver this, and this works for months, for years. Until next version.
The super villains in that analogy, huh? You're the superhero trying to build something. The super villains are the hackers trying to tear it down. You have to think about how they're going to attack you.
And also similar to rocket science, I guess, like engineers who develop some code and like test it in a not really production environment, but in some, and then they just launch it and see if it lives or not.
Yeah, great comparison. Who got their transactions sandwiched. There are some solutions to prevent this from happening, but most of the users are not capable to use it because it's pretty difficult to use systems like flashbots. You need to change RPC in your MetaMask, or you could use any other environment, and it's hard to set up it as good as professional traders, arbitragers do. And we came up to idea that we could organize trades of most of the users that way that they will not need to execute those transactions, because executing transactions and avoiding these struggles is like probably not for average user. It's hard. It depends on which wallet you use. In some wallets it's impossible to achieve this. In mobile wallets it's not possible. But we managed to came up to idea how we can move execution of user trades to professional players, which we call resolvers. And users now make limit orders and they don't care about execution. And the whole idea how this execution happens is made to make prices for users as great as possible. And yeah, that's the reasoning behind the 1-inch fusion.
So I just want to ask you to define a couple terms right there for some members of the audience. You said sandwich attack on trades. Is that a type of MEV attack that people talk about at the 1-inch booth at some conferences? I have a lot of people in the past would come up to me and say, is 1-inch, does it have MEV protection? That's what they would say. And it looks like
yeah, that's correct. This can be called in all these attacks, all these issues, they could be called MEV attacks. This happens when your transaction is publicly in mempool. Everyone can see it and everyone can understand what exactly you are going to do. If you're swapping like 10,000 of bucks of one asset to another asset, everyone can see it. And there are protocols which, like, for example, automated market makers like Uniswap, Curve, and Dodo, and any others, where you can swap in both directions and move price with your swap. And when you make your swap, you have some minimal return amount, like you're performing swap, and if you will get less than some amount, your transaction will be reverted. So these arbitrage traders, those who can front run you, MEV you, attack you, they can change prices on some pools, and that way that you will get this minimal amount. You will not get more. So if you, for example, see that you will get like 10,000 of tokens, and your minimal return is, for example, 9900, you will not get 10,000. In case of MEV, they will get this 100 of tokens by sandwiching you. This means that they will perform swap in the same direction before you and swap in reverse direction after your transaction to extract this money from your trade. And yeah, that's what we're trying to avoid, because most of the people can't protect themselves from MEV because it's like more for professional executors. Some of people who like have time for this, have experience for this, they can set up this protection on their own. But most of the people are not capable, and Fusion solves this.
So you're saying like grandma can swap like hex tokens now without having to use a Flashbot's RPC. Like she'll be safe, basically. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Users can use Flashbots, but it also depends. On some amounts, it makes no sense. In some amounts, it makes sense. It depends. Because Flashbots do not have 100% share among users. As far as I remember, their share is near to 75-80% of nodes, maybe a little bit less. It depends. It's changing over time. So yeah, having smaller share than usually, smaller share than 100% just means that you could probably wait a little bit more. You could not be maybe included in the first block. Maybe you could be included in second or third block sometimes.
Cool. So you're saying 1-inch fusion, you mentioned it earlier, it was built starting from the 1-inch limit order protocol. Also, is the aggregator integrated into that also? Like, how is this architected?
Yeah, currently limit order protocol and aggregation protocol, they design it separately, but deployed on the same address. They were like combined into one smart contract before deployment. And these fusion orders, they are actually limit orders, but they have extra parameters which are handled by separate contract which is able to fill them. So yeah, we can consider fusion orders as limit orders with price under price option.
That's the Dutch auction mechanism that is described in the Fusion release blog post, right? The auction,
Yeah.
like users would put a swap in, and
Yeah. Yeah, auction
instead
in Fusion mode, it's a decentralized way to provide best price for users. Because, for example, some competitors, they compare rates of different resolvers, and then they in centralized way decide who of the resolvers should fill batch. But we made a more decentralized approach. We made our auction, and resolvers are able to fill those orders, and the auction is improving price for them. So whenever resolver can fill an order with some kind of dust profit or something, it can do it, or it can wait. But if someone will skip order, any other resolver can fill this order.
So it looks like it's adding kind of a competition layer amongst resolvers on top of a previous limit order protocol. And that competition is going to give users better prices because the resolvers are competing to actually fill an order at a better price. They want to be the one who fills the order.
Yeah, that's correct. And for being a resolver, resolvers compete for delegations of users. And resolvers can also incentivize users to delegate them power to be resolver.
That kind of touches on the staking aspect of 1inch Fusion. You mentioned delegation. Could you talk about that a little bit? Like, how are the resolvers actually selected? I remember talking to Misha about this late last year. If Misha wants to jump in also.
Yeah, maybe Michael want to answer.
So basically, the idea is quite simple. Anyone can become a resolver, but due to this competition in the system, there are limited number of places of who can become a resolver. So you need just to have some staked 1inch for yourself, or maybe you can borrow them from users who are willing to delegate it to you. And if you gather enough to become top 5 in terms of delegated tokens, then you are part of the system. You can resolve. So that's not very complicated.
Is there any other aspect to that? Is it just, if they have the top 5 staked 1inch, they become a resolver if they've delegated to themselves? Or is there some sort of whitelist or?
Yeah. This is implemented as a whitelist that is dynamic, and like once you get in the top 5, you need to go to that whitelist and register. And so it is, as I said, it is dynamic. So when someone kicks you off of the top 5, they will get your place. So you need to continuously support your delegated balance to be in top 5.
We call it whitelist, but it's permissionless. Anyone who got enough delegations can make transaction to become whitelist.
Yeah, it's called whitelist in terms of like a protocol whitelisting. So it is used to whitelist who can interact with the protocol, but the whitelist itself is completely permissionless. If you have enough balance to be in top 5, just register, you will be there. Okay, and also anyone can knock you out. If you don't have enough balance anymore, someone can knock you out.
Very cool. It sounds like there's a lot of utility added to the 1inch token then. If there's going to be competition amongst resolvers for that delegation stake, it looks like they're going to be competing to gather up the most staked 1inch, right? Or at least get the most staked 1inch delegated to them. Is there any way they can incentivize these resolvers? Can they use the staking pods to kind of make incentives for people to delegate to them?
Sure. We delivered this amazing pods system. We call them ERC20 pods. And basically, this is a new approach to balance tracking of different ERC20 tokens, not only to incentivize, but for different, it can be used for different purposes. Like one that Anton said is incentivization, basically farming. So for example, before farming looked like you have a like liquidity pool or something, and you need to incentivize people to put money into this liquidity pool, basically to provide the liquidity. And then they need to get their LP tokens and put them in a separate contract called farm. And then this separate contract was used to give them some rewards. And this was basically the design. And now with ERC20 pods, we remove this layer of putting your LP tokens into a separate contract. Basically, when you do this, you lose control of your tokens because like they are now on a balance of a different contract. And what if this contract will be hacked? Then your LP tokens will be lost, and you, instead of earning some incentive, you actually lost your money. So with our new system, you just like you let different contracts to subscribe to your balance updates. So for example, you stake 1 inch, you have some staked 1 inch balance, and then you make a transaction that lets some farm to track your balance. And then when you do updates to your staked balance, this farm gets notified automatically. And so it can track your updates to correctly calculate the rewards, for example. And you don't lose the ownership of your stake tokens. They belong to you during all the time. You don't transfer them anywhere. You just allow some contract to read updates of your balance.
Okay, I bet that helps.
Excuse me, Michael, let me add shortly the key benefits of this pod system. That first of all, these pods can be delivered permissionlessly. Anyone can deploy these pods and ask tokens or stakers or anyone who is supporting this pod to participate in this pod. This could be farm or any other thing. And this, it can be delivered, deployed permissionlessly by anyone. And people who will participate in it, they do it absolutely risk-free. If it's farm, they participating without ability to lose their funds.
Yeah, that's a direct consequence of not moving your tokens to a weird separate contract.
And
all your
moreover,
tokens belong to you at all the times.
Moreover, you could participate in multiple farms simultaneously.
Yep.
It looks like it makes this permissionless system a lot safer than it otherwise would have been. You don't have to trust that the resolver is going to keep your tokens safe. You can just delegate to them and they can send you rewards without actually transferring it over to the resolver, right? So we don't have to actually vet all these resolvers, look into them to make sure they're good actors. We know they can't take users' funds that way.
Yeah, and that applies to all the contract. If this is not a delegation, but a farm, just a regular farm, you don't need to verify the contract of this farm anymore. You can just participate in farm. I mean, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you will not lose your funds. That's the idea.
So
And
do the reward. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that this delegation system is based on the same ERC20 pods approach. So we basically reused the same building block to build two different concepts. One is farming that was used before, and the second one is this delegation. So when you delegate, you actually, as Jordan already said, you don't lock your tokens or you don't do anything with your tokens. You just let delegation contract to read your balance updates. And then in this separate contract, you do this, all the delegation stuff, delegate to this one or to this guy, same building block.
Yeah, let me add one more thing related to this, that these token pods, that new governance smart contracts, they are all tokenized from top to bottom. This means that everything which could be tokenized is tokenized and was tokenized. And this means that you could check this participation in different things on Etherscan. For example, all those who stake 1 inch are holders of ST 1 inch version 2 token. So you can open this token on Etherscan and you can track other people who have like most share or something. And when you delegate to resolver, there is a separate token of delegations. So there is a token which shows delegated balances. And when you delegate to resolver, there is also one more token related to contract resolver, which is
called like delegation share of this resolver. When you delegate to someone, you automatically get this token proportional to your voting power, which shows your share among others who delegated the same resolver. So all these tokens, they are also supporting connecting pods to them. Each of these tokenizations can be incentivized with these external farms, which can be connected permissionless and risk-free.
And the rewards for these farms, can they be distributed in like any token, or is it specifically 1inch token?
Any.
Cool.
And moreover, we developed a multi-farm approach, which allows someone who is incentivizer distribute rewards in different assets. Like they can start with one asset, then start distributing a different asset, and then third asset, and then return to initial asset. It works cheaper comparing to if we would deploy multiple farms.
So delegators can essentially diversify their rewards through like multiple delegations. Like, so like if they wanted a different risk profile for each reward, like they wanted some rewards in USDC, some in 1inch, some in Ethereum, they could divvy it up that way.
I mean, resolvers could distribute their profits, or they, for example, some of them at some point in time could incentivize users to delegate them with their own token. This is possible.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. I was talking to a member of the balancer community, and they thought it would be a good idea or a cool idea if a resolver was distributing tokens, not just 1inch tokens, but as 1inch ETH liquidity positions in balancer, like LP tokens. That would be possible using these farms, right? It sounds like it would.
Yeah, sure. Any tokens are possible, and also not like you can even think outside the box, and you can reward people with not just token transfers, but with something else. So if you have a system in which your users, I don't know, hold something, or
NFTs.
I don't know, NFTs are like different kind of tokens. You just basically transfer them again, but you can do something else except apart from transfers. You can come up with some idea to do something for your users and just do that instead of transferring the token. This is also possible. So
is this whole pod system, is it permissionless, open source? Can anybody do this? If a developer's listening right now and wants to implement it in their own project, are they allowed to do that? Or
yes, that's exactly what I had to say now. That this all farming, delegations, ERC20, pods, token pods, all this new governance smart contracts, they are for sure all open source and MIT license, which allows developers to use it. And moreover, I'm gonna talk with the different DeFi protocols to check out this new token pods concept with this permissionless and risk-free farms, because I imagine this as a really cool new concept, and everyone could use it without any like issues. I mean, just imagine if next version of Balancer would have this token pod support, and when you have a pool token, you could be incentivized by different farms. For example, someone could organize multiple DAOs to create different farms for one pool token, like one pool token containing some, for example, DeFi blue chips, and then like 3, 4, 5 different DAOs could create their farms to incentivize people to put liquidity into this huge pool, for example, and that's possible.
oh, cool. It sounds like you're kind of adding to the whole open DeFi Lego stack there, giving people some new building blocks to build off of. Very, very cool that you opened it.
I would say this is maybe the composability of DeFi is probably the best idea of whole DeFi, how these things could be built on top of each other. And this new primitive, I think it's pretty cool that we managed to develop it. I think a lot of different DeFi companies will adopt this approach.
Awesome. Cool. Moving down the list of some questions we had before the call started. So right now, individuals can stake their 1inch tokens, and it's actually locked staking now, right? Time locked. It's not just stake and unstake at a whim like it was in the past, but there's actually a little bit of a time commitment.
Yeah, that's correct. We basically adopted the popular approach that was, I think, pioneered by Curve protocol, but changed it slightly to work with this new system of ERC20 pods. So instead of linear decrease with time, it decreases exponentially. So it shows slightly different result, but basically you can say that it's roughly the same. So yeah.
And
now,
there's also,
the longer you stake, the more power you get.
okay. And if that power, like if a resolver is using that delegated power in their farm, you would get more rewards, right? If you're staking for a longer time in that example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Cool.
I would add that your amount of voting power you would get is not non-linearly depending from the lock period. If you would lock for 1 year or for 2 years, difference will be not 2 times, it will be much more. So it's like non-linear.
That exponential function Misha was talking about earlier, right?
Yeah. And the core idea behind this exponential function was to make everyone lose the same share in the same time. For example, in 1 day, everyone is losing the same percentage. I don't know, like 0.1, 0.5. We can count it. It can be counted. But the core idea is when people are losing in the same proportion simultaneously, this means that their proportions of their votes to each other is not changing within time. It's changing with their transactions when they add deposit or increase time lock. But when your voting power is melting with time, it's melting simultaneously and proportionally to each other. This means that user voting power proportions to each other are not changing. And that's what allow it to make possible all these farmings and delegations, all these on-chain computations of balances.
Is there any way I can learn more about that? I'm trying to wrap my head around what you mean by that. It's so the users who staked at different times or locked for different times, they're losing the same proportion every day relative to each other.
Yeah, everyone is losing the same proportion.
Okay.
Yeah, but because if everyone would lose in different proportions, like if it would work linearly, like your balance is dropping linearly from voting power till 0 in like some period, this would make that all your balances are changing, their proportions are changing to each other, and it will not be possible to have any efficient farming, any efficient delegations computation or something. Efficient, I mean, we don't want to enumerate every user in each transaction to compute a total delegated power or something.
So could you compare this to like a rebase model where everyone's balances changes equally? Or would that be a little different?
It could be compared that way, that everyone's balance is changing every second with dropping with the same ratio.
Okay. Cool.
In those rebalancing tokens, they have this explicit rebalance events, like weekly, daily, I don't know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And on that specific event, yes, all the balances are increased or decreased simultaneously by the same proportion. And here it happens, like in the staking, it happens every second, basically.
Okay, so real time, basically, adjustment.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of calls to the whole gas optimization thing you guys were talking about earlier in the call. You guys found a way that avoids having to do complex calculations for every single user, and you kind of do it in aggregate.
Yeah, to have what's like the main difference that Anton tried to touch slightly is that we can work with balances that change on the transaction events. and we can't work with balances that change in like just during time. I mean, without any explicit transaction, because you cannot react if you don't have any transaction. And when we keep like balances of staked tokens, they are decreasing every second. Yes, that's true. But what matters is that we found some ratio that is constant. If no one does any transactions, then ratios of all the staked 1-inch between all the users will be the same. And that allowed us to basically treat this decreasing token as a like non-decreasing constant token that is changed only by user actions. So that's a little tricky hack.
It's like internal representation is not changing in time.
Yeah. So when you think about this farm, for the farm, you need to know how much tokens you need to distribute to each user every second according to their balances. And when you don't have, like when your balances are currently like changing every second, but you still have this ratio, you know that like I have twice as less token as you have, for example, then my reward will be twice as less as your reward during the same period of time. So that works. You can implement that and only track the on-chain changes.
Okay. Coming up right near the end of the call right now, so we have time for maybe one or two more questions. A big one I personally had was what's going to happen to the legacy swapping with 1-inch? Is there a decision made, or is that going to go to like will people only be able to use fusion mode from in a year from now, or will there still be able to swap the old way? Or maybe no one will even want to swap the old way.
I think we don't know what would happen, but we have two versions currently, and we will like check, compare what would happen. And we're also curious what would happen. How many users would switch to this mode? How many users would find it comfortable? And I think we can't answer on this question now. So yeah, but we and everyone can track their analytics on how much people use it. I mean, all these analytics, they are publicly available on Dune Analytics. They have a separate dashboard about this fusion mode. And let's see in new year in 2023, let's see how users will use the DeFi.
Cool. And is there an API for fusion mode right now? I know the legacy aggregator has its own API. Is there something analogous to that with fusion mode?
I'm not sure it's already there. Maybe it will be. I'm not sure. I have to check.
I think it is in the works, as we are like still pretty early with this fusion release, so not all the bits are in place, and lots of stuff is still in development.
Coming.
Yeah, so more different bells and whistles will be deployed over the coming months, as well as
Cool.
the API.
And then I had another question. This is the last one for me, I promise. How does someone become a resolver right now? Like we talked about the delegation and everything. Where should they go to learn more about what it actually means to become a resolver? What would be expected of them?
So apart from the technical process of actually registering in the whitelist that we touched before, there is actual work that you need to do as a resolver. And what resolver does is they basically listen to the stream of orders that that users perform at 1-inch, and they need to resolve them. So they basically get the bunch of orders that are available for execution now, and they try to settle them. So they should look for the opportunities in the market, maybe take their own funds if they have any, or monitor all the DEXs, all the different protocols, maybe use 1-inch API to try to settle those orders. Anything can work if you can find an approach to filling the orders that is competitive enough to beat other resolvers, then that's the way.
Awesome. Thank you for that. While we wrap up here, is there anything else you guys want to add? Any other questions you saw, Matt?
I think that pretty much answered everything. Yeah, it's a great call. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with us about it. It's always fun talking the technicals and looking under the hood with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, thank you very
so
much.
Matt.
While we wrap up here, let's bring Tanner on the stage. He can tell everyone how to claim the POAP.
Yeah, so everyone who's been in the call for a little while and also did not turn off their speakers on Discord will be eligible for a POAP for joining the call. And just to claim that, you'll just go to the community calls channel on Discord and type in /claim. And if you've been in the call long enough and you meet the criteria, you'll get a POAP claim link. Make sure not to press enter too quickly when you type /claim. Make sure the command comes up, and then the POAP bot will take care of the rest for you. And I'll post a chat message to kind of reiterate what I just said here.
Cool. I just tested. It's working for me. So thank you, Tanner.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, I think that concludes Community Call 8. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you to our guests, Anton and Misha, or Mikhail.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
and, have a good weekend.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.